Let's explore the sections of the Indian Contract Act that deal with the persons responsible for performing a contract. Before we delve into the provisions, let's understand some basic terms. Promisor. The promisor is the person who makes a promise in a contract. Promisee. The promisee is the person to whom the promise is made. So if Alex makes a promise to Bob to paint his house, Alex is the promisor and Bob is the promisee. Section 40. Who should perform the promise? Imagine you and your friend make a deal where your friend promises to do something for you. Now there are two ways this can happen. If the deal is written or agreed that your friend should perform the task, they have to do it themselves. They can't ask someone else to do it for them. But in other cases, your friend can ask someone else to do the task for them as long as the deal doesn't specifically say that they have to do it themselves. Section 41. Acceptance of performance from third person. Imagine you make a promise to your friend to construct a doghouse, but instead of doing it yourself, you ask a helper to construct it. Now, if your friend is okay with this and accepts the fact that the helper is going to do the job for you, they can't later change their mind and make you do it yourself. Section 42. Devolution of liabilities. This section states that when two or more persons make a promise together, unless the contract says otherwise, they are all responsible for fulfilling that promise while they are alive. If one of them dies, his representative, jointly with the survivors, are responsible for fulfilling the promise along with the remaining living promisees. After the death of the last person involved, the representatives of all of them must work together to fulfill the obligation. Suppose Alice, Bob, and Carol promise together to make a music video and contribute Rs 10,000 each. They are all responsible to pay for the music video while they are alive. If unfortunately Bob passes away, his representatives would step in and join Alice and Carol to fulfill the obligation. Finally, if over time all of them pass away, their representatives must work together to ensure the fulfillment of obligation. Section 43. Any one or joint promisors may be compelled to perform. If two or more persons make a promise together, the promisee can force any one or more of the promisors to fulfill the entire obligation. Each of the persons who made the joint promise can ask the others to share the responsibility equally unless the contract says otherwise. If one of the promisors does not contribute their fair share, the others must split the loss equally. Exception. This rule does not prevent a surety from recovering the money paid on behalf of the principal. Imagine three friends, Alice, Bob, and Carol, promise together to rent a cruise. The owner can ask any one or more of them to pay for the rent. So if the owner prefers to just ask Alice to cover the entire cost, Alice will have to perform the obligation. Now let's say they did not earlier decide their individual contribution. Now each of them can ask the others to share the responsibility equally. If one of them, let's say Bob, doesn't contribute his fair share, the others, Alice and Carol, have to split the loss equally. Section 44. Effect of release of one joint promisor. This section states that when multiple people make a promise together, if the person to whom the promise is made releases one of the promisor, it does not mean the others are off the hook, and the one released is still responsible to the others who made the promise. In the previous example, if the owner released Bob from the obligation to pay rent, the others are not escaped from the obligation to pay. That also does not mean that Bob is not responsible to Alice and Carol for the payment. Section 45. Devolution of joint rights. If Reena borrows Rs 5,000 from Bob and Carol, and if Bob passes away, the right to claim the money and interest rests with Bob's representatives and Carol as long as Carol is still alive. If both Bob and Carol are no longer alive, the right to claim the money and interest goes to the representatives of Bob and Carol, and they have to jointly claim the money. Hope you're now clear with the sections regarding the persons responsible for performing a contract.